take notes without interruptions, and make real breakthroughs. With Typefolio for Remarkable, typing has never been so focused or so comfortable.
I don't necessarily recommend because it often creates a lot of issues, but if you don't have a good GPU and you really want to run it locally, you can of course select this option. But in my case, since I have an Nvidia 3090, I'm gonna select A and then press enter. And then
it's on the internet. Look it up. Look up your case. LA Superior Court case law.
then it's gonna start downloading all the files that it needs to run. Now be patient because it's gonna take some time. And there you go, after a few minutes it has finished downloading all the files that it needs, and for me it took around 10 minutes, so it might be shorter or longer for you depending on your internet connection. And then it's gonna ask you what model you want to download. Because yes, the WebUI is just a WebUI to run an LLM model. But for this, you need an LLM model to run. Now you can either select one of the models that they give you right here, which are not that bad, or you can manually specify a Hugging Face model. And this is the option that you're gonna use to download a model. And currently there are 3 models that I suggest you to download. The first one, and probably the most powerful one, is the Vicuña 13 billion parameters 1.5 model, 4-bit version, which is a super powerful local LLM model that is probably one of the most powerful LLM model that you can run locally right now. I also made a video about this model a few weeks ago, so if you haven't watched it, definitely check it out. But the problem is, although this model is very powerful, it is unfortunately a censored model, which is where the GPT-4 Alpaca comes into play, which is also a super powerful LLM model, but this time it is completely uncensored. And again, if you want to check it out, if you want to see what kind of things you can do with this model, I highly suggest that you watched my previous video on the subject. And if you're interested in a model that is specialized for conversation and spicy roleplay, in that case I highly suggest the Pygmalion LLM model, which is actually the model that I use the most often because of how good it is when it comes to conversation. And of course I also made a video about that model, so again if you haven't watched it, I highly recommend that you do. And for this example I'm actually gonna download the Pygmalion model right now, and to do this is very simple. You're gonna come here on this page, click on this little icon right here to copy this entire name, and then back in the command prompt window you're gonna type L, which corresponds to manually specify a Hugging Face model, then press enter, and then you're gonna press Ctrl V to paste the full name that we just copied, and then you're gonna press enter. And as you can see, it will start automatically downloading all the files that it needs to run the model. And there you go, after a few minutes the model is downloaded and the WebUI is ready to be used. It's gonna give you a local URL that if you want to open, you can just hold Ctrl and then left click. And there we go, now we are done. Now again, you will see here a bunch of options. You have the text generation tab, where you can have a conversation with your bot. You have the character tab, where you can create or upload already made characters with different names and personalities. You have the parameters tab, where you have here a bunch of presets that you can use to change the generation parameters. And you have here an explanation for each parameters and what they do and how it influences the final results. Then you have the model tab, where you'll be able to select your model if you have multiple models installed, or even a text LoRa that you downloaded or created yourself. Then you have the training tab, where you can train a LoRa from your own data. And finally the interface mode, where you can download and activate a bunch of extensions and also a bunch of flags, and where you can change the interface of the WebUI to something completely different. Also, each time that you download a model, they will be located in the models folder, which is located in text generation WebUI and then models. And as you can see, this is where all of your models will be located. So if you want to change anything or delete a model that you don't use, you're gonna have to come into this folder right here. Also, next time that you want to update the WebUI, all you have to do is just double click on the update windows.bat file. And this will make sure that you're running the latest version of the WebUI. Now, one common error that you might see when using the WebUI is the queue down. Out of memory error, and all that means is that your GPU doesn't have enough VRAM to run the operation. But fortunately there is a quick fix, and the quick fix is to use the pre-layer argument, which is basically an option that allows you to split the model between the VRAM and the RAM. So pre-layer is the number of layers that the model will load into the memory. So the more layers you have in VRAM, the faster your GPU will be able to run the model. But that also means that the more layers you have, the more VRAM it's gonna use. Now most LLM models have around 40 layers in total, with each layer requiring around 0.222 megabytes of memory, which means that if you have a 6GB VRAM GPU, you can only input 25 layers, which should work, but will be very slow. And to be able to use that argument, all you need is just run the WebUI, then go to models, and here you will see the pre-layer option, where you can input a number right here. Now obviously this number will depend on the amount of VRAM that you have, and also depending on the system, this number can also greatly vary. But in general, if you have a 6GB of VRAM card, you would put a pre-layer number between 20 and 25. If you have an 8GB of VRAM card, you would probably put it between 27 and 30. If you have a 10GB card, you're probably gonna input a number around 35, and more if you have a 12GB VRAM. And then once you're done, do not forget to reload the model, and maybe also save the settings so that each time that you load this model, every parameters will be applied automatically. Now one thing that you can also do, but that is only when you're not running a 4-bit version of a model, is to run a model in 8-bit. Which will of course make the generation slower, but will also greatly decrease the amount of VRAM used. Now obviously if you're running a 4-bit version of a model, this option is of course useless, so only check this option when you're running a full version of a model, and not a quantized version. Now also make sure that the max new tokens is not too high, because the higher the number, the more VRAM it's gonna use. So definitely play around a little bit with the parameter, depending on your system. Okay, so most common error number 2, CPU allocator error. So this basically just means that you don't have enough virtual memory to run the operation. Now the virtual memory is basically a way for your computer to pretend that it has more memory than it actually has, which allows you to run programs that require more memory than your physical memory can provide. And solving this issue is actually very simple. All you need to do is just go to your startup menu, then type system properties advanced.exe. I will leave this command in the description down below. Then you're gonna click on it. Then in advanced, under performance, you're gonna click on settings. In the performance options, you're gonna again click on advanced. Under virtual memory, you're gonna click on change. Then you're gonna uncheck automatically manage paging file size for all drives, and then leave it for system manage size, and then click OK. And then it's gonna ask you to restart your computer. And there you go. So just by increasing your virtual memory, not only you could potentially increase the performance of your computer, but this should also solve the CPU allocator error. So that's pretty cool. And now hopefully all of these little tricks will allow you to run the WebUI without issue. But again, if for some reason you still get errors, and again highly suggest you to search for your issue on the GitHub page for the Oobabooga Text Generation WebUI. This should always be the go-to for you to quickly solve your issues. Okay, so now let's say that no matter what you do, you just cannot run this on your computer. It's either not powerful enough, or you get too many errors, or you just don't have a computer at all. Is there a way to run this WebUI for free even if I don't have a computer? Well, yes, there is. Because for this, we'll be using a simple Google Colab dock, which will allow you to run the WebUI online and download any model that you want, exactly as if this was running on your local computer. And I'm actually gonna say that if you don't have a 12GB GPU, this should, in theory, be way faster for you. So I highly recommend you that you try it out. And to use it, it is super simple. First you're gonna scroll down and you're gonna click on the first run cell button. And when they ask you if you want to run this notebook, you're gonna click on run anyway. So then it's gonna give you a music player and you're gonna press on the play button, which will play a silent sound that will allow you to keep this tab open so that the Google Colab dock does not boot you out. So then you're gonna between 27 and
Cut the cable with Verizon Home Internet and cut your internet bill to just $25 a month.
I finally cut the cable, switched to Verizon Home Internet.
Cable internet wasn't cutting the mustard.
I just plugged it in.
And there's no surprise price hikes or hidden fees.
Hey, cut it out!
Switch to Verizon.
This is a real B&H customer story. Steph Mandis came to B&H to take her photography to the next level. She's an artist by choice, pizza maker by birth, and B&H customer for life. Am I missing anything here?
Teacher, entrepreneur, product designer, and a photographer. And a restaurateur. I forgot that part.
Impressive. Steph, I gotta be honest, I don't know where to look first. Is that a microscope?
Yeah, that's my trinocular axiolab, and that's what I use to make bioart.
BioArt? What's that?
Bioart is where science and art meet.
Amazing. So what came first, camera or the microscope?
So first came the microscope, then the camera, and thankfully that's where B&H stepped in. When I first went to B&H trying to find a camera for my microscope, I thought it was a little oddball request, but turns out they've done this before and they knew exactly what I was looking for. What's great about working with people at B&H is that they use the gear that they're selling you.
So what are you looking at now?
Cheese, sauce, peppers, onions, olives, pizza toppings.
I'm sensing a theme here.
Yeah, my family started a pizza restaurant in 1960.
Whoa, 60 years of pizza. What's the secret?
We use
in 30, if you have a 10GB card, you're probably gonna input a number around 35, and more if you have a 12GB VRAM. And then once you're done, do not forget to reload the model, and maybe also save the settings so that each time that you load this model, every parameters will be applied automatically. Now one thing that you can also do, but that is only when you're not running a 4-bit version of a model, is to run a model in 8-bit, which will of course make the generation slower, but will also greatly decrease the amount of VRAM used. Now obviously if you're running a 4-bit version of a model, this option is of course useless, so only check this option when you're running a full version of a model, and not a quantized version. Now also make sure that the max new tokens is not too high, because the higher the number, the more VRAM it's gonna use. So definitely play around a little bit with the parameter, depending on your system. Okay, so most common error number 2, CPU allocator error. So